How does a man go from buying a pack of cigarettes to sparking the largest civil rights movement in a generation? What happened in those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that would shatter silence, break hearts, and ignite a global uprising? And why did no one stop it until it was far too late? On the surface, it was a routine evening in South Minneapolis. People moved to the city like they always did, grabbing takeout, winding down after work, watching the golden light fade behind rooftops. It was Memorial Day, May 25th, 2020, the kind of day meant for peace. But inside Cup Foods, a small corner store at East 38th and Chicago Avenue, a moment was about to unfold that would split time in two, before and after George Floyd. He walked in just past 8 p.m., tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a black tank top and a calm expression. George Perry Floyd Jr. wasn't famous. Not yet. He was 46, trying to find stability in a life that had never made it easy. He'd been a star athlete in his youth, a gentle giant known by his friends as Perry or just Big Floyd. He struggled. He hoped. He was trying. He picked up a pack of cigarettes and headed to the counter. When the young clerk rang him up, George pulled a $20 bill from his wallet, paper that would become the tipping point of a national reckoning. The clerk examined it, unsure. It looked off, not dramatically, but just enough to raise suspicion. He wasn't sure if it was fake, but store policy was clear. He had to report it. Outside, George got into his car. An SUV parked right in front of the store and waited. He laughed with two people inside. There was no panic, no sign that anything was wrong. Inside, the clerk nervously made the call. Yeah, someone gave us a counterfeit bill. He's outside now. That call should have led to a warning, a simple ticket, a conversation. Instead, it opened a door to a scene so disturbing, so unrelenting, that by nightfall, the world would bear witness to the final breath of a man who begged for his life in plain sight. Why did it take the world watching for justice to be questioned? Why? When George Floyd said, "I can't breathe," did no one move? And how did the police officers on scene go from handling a minor call to committing an act millions would label murder? The answers are not simple. They're tangled in history, in power, in silence. And once you begin to unravel the threads, you start to see the shape of something much bigger than one city block in Minneapolis. It started with a cigarette. It ended with a knee on a neck. And between those moments, everything changed. The officers arrived. It was 8:08 p.m. when Officers Thomas Lane and Jay Quang pulled up in their squad car outside Cup Foods. They were both rookies, barely a few days off probation, and it showed. Their approach was swift but uncertain. Lane, tall and lean, walked straight to the blue Mercedes SUV, where George Floyd sat in the driver's seat. He tapped the window. George turned and looked up. What happened next was fast and confusing. Lane drew his gun. "Let me see your hands," he shouted, voice high with tension. George froze. His hands went up, eyes wide in disbelief. He hadn't run. He hadn't threatened. Yet here he was, staring down the barrel of a weapon over a $20 bill. What made Lane pull his gun so quickly? Was it instinct? Fear? Training? Was it because George Floyd was a big man? Or because he was a black man? Lane yanked open the car door and ordered George out. George pleaded, voice shaking, that he had been shot before, that he wasn't resisting, that he just wanted peace. But Lane and Quang didn't wait. They pulled George in the car, handcuffed him, and sat him down against the wall outside the store. A crowd had begun to form, small, quiet, confused. Some filmed with their phones, sensing something wasn't right. George, towering over the two officers, even while seated, looked exhausted. His voice was soft, almost childlike, as he begged them not to hurt him. They asked if he was on drugs, if he had anything illegal, if he had tried to use counterfeit money on purpose. George shook his head, tears forming. He told them no. He told them he couldn't breathe well. He told them he had anxiety, he was claustrophobic. But to the officers, his words were background noise, excuses, distractions. They tried to put him in the back of the squad car. That's when things changed. George panicked. He stiffened, cried out, resisted, not violently, but with raw, unfiltered fear. His legs pushed back. His body froze. "I'm claustrophobic," he shouted. "Please, man, don't do me like that. I'm not a bad guy." They forced him in. He struggled, kicking the door open with his foot. And then another patrol car pulled up. Officer Derek Chauvin stepped out. He was a 19-year veteran of the Minneapolis Police Department, hard-eyed, emotionally distant, and well known for his unshakable demeanor. He was not there to calm things down. He was there to take control. And standing next to him was Officer Tu Tao, an officer with his own record complaints, who often played the role of bystander more than peacekeeper. Chauvin took one look at George, still half-seated in the patrol car, and made a decision that would define his life and end another's. They pulled George back out of the squad car and laid him on the ground, face down. Why? They said he was resisting. They said he was dangerous. But George wasn't fighting. He was pleading. What was it that Chauvin saw in that moment? Was it a man, or was it something else? 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It began with a knee, not a strike, not a blow, just a slow, deliberate pressure, placed directly on George Floyd's neck. He was already face down on the pavement, handcuffed, body pinned. 3 officers held him down, Quang on his back, Lane at his legs, and Derek Chauvin at his neck. Officer Tu Tao stood a few feet away, watching, facing the gathering crowd with his hands on his hips, as if guarding a crime scene that hadn't yet happened. George's voice was muffled by the street, but the panic in it was unmistakable. "I can't breathe." Those 3 words had been heard before, in New York, in Baltimore, in too many cities, too many times. But this time, something was different. This time, the camera didn't look away. Darnella Frazier, just 17 years old, stood a few feet from the scene with her phone raised. Her hands trembled, but she didn't stop recording. Not when George begged. Not when the officers didn't move. Not when the minutes dragged on like a slow-motion nightmare. The footage would eventually circle the world. But in that moment, it was just a girl watching a man die. George's voice rose higher, faster, more desperate. "Please, please, man. I can't breathe. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts." He called out for his mother. "Mama, Mama." She'd been dead for 2 years. Some believe a dying man sees the person he loves most. That, in his final moments, George Floyd wasn't pleading to the officers pressing him down, but to someone beyond this world. But the officers didn't move. Chauvin kept his knee on George's neck, sunglasses perched neatly on top of his head, one hand casually in his pocket, as if this were routine. He didn't flinch, didn't look down, didn't check for a pulse. He just leaned in. By minute 6, George was silent. His body, once tense, stopped moving. His legs had twitched slightly, then went still. His head was turned unnaturally toward the curb, eyes glassy, mouth partially open. A bystander shouted, "He's not responsive." Another screamed, "Check his pulse, man. You're killing him." Still, Chauvin didn't move. Not at minute 7. Not at minute 8. Not even at 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The moment that would become the tragic symbol of everything broken about the relationship between Black Americans and the system meant to protect them. He only lifted his knee after 9 minutes and 29 seconds. By then, George Floyd was gone. An ambulance arrived. EMTs took over, but their faces said everything. They checked for signs of life. There were none. As the stretcher rolled away, a woman in the crowd sobbed, "They just killed him." And the video kept rolling. The world reacts. The footage hit the internet before George Floyd's body reached the hospital. Darnella Frazier uploaded the video to Facebook around 1 a.m. Unable to sleep, her mind spinning with what she had just witnessed. The caption was simple, raw, and unforgettable. "They killed him right in front of us." Within hours, it spread like wildfire. People watched in disbelief. Again and again, some couldn't make it past the first minute. Others watched all 9. They stared, horrified, at a knee that didn't lift, at a man's final gasps, at a death that unfolded not in the shadows, but in the bright light of a phone camera in full view of the world. By morning, the name George Floyd was on every screen. News outlets picked it up. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag I can't breathe. Hashtag justice for George Floyd. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. And then something happened. Something different. In the past, there had been videos. There had been names. Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, and there had been outrage. But it often flickered and faded, smothered by the next news cycle. This time was not the same. Minneapolis woke up on fire. Not literally, not yet, but the people were burning inside. By evening, they were in the streets. Hundreds turned into thousands. They stood at the intersection of 38th and Chicago, where the air still seemed heavy with what had happened. Signs rose, fists clenched, cries rang out. No justice, no peace. Say his name, George Floyd. Candles appeared, chalk outlines. A mural bloomed across the side of Cup Foods, vibrant blues and oranges. Floyd's face painted between angel wings, with names of other victims spiraling outward like a galaxy of the dead. But the peace didn't last. On the second night, the protests swelled. So did the tension. The Minneapolis Police Department stood in riot gear, helmets, batons, tear gas canisters loaded. Protesters chanted. Police responded with rubber bullets. Fires sparked. Windows shattered. Looters slipped through the chaos like shadows. And then, on the third night, the third precinct burned. Protesters surrounded it, furious and fearless. They pushed up against the barriers. Some hurled bottles. Others yelled through bullhorns. And when the building finally gave way, when police evacuated and flames devoured the walls, the crowd erupted. Some saw justice in the flames. Others saw collapse. The president tweeted, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts." But by then, it was already too late. This wasn't just about Minneapolis anymore. It was in New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, George Floyd hometown. Thousands poured into the streets, not just in protest of his death, but of all the deaths that came before. For the first time in decades, the whole world watched the U.S. and asked one collective question: how could this happen again? Check out for part 2 of this video. For more contents like this, subscribe to our channel. You are free to comment, like that, share this video.